What did we get wrong on Draymond Green?
Solid opener.
Thank you, Chris. A lot.
Only get better.
A lot. I couldn't keep track with how many different things. I guess let me start with Billy. You said that Steve Kerr has an opinion on what you had for dinner, but didn't say anything about this. He did a whole press conference, Billy. He did a whole press conference talking about it. Well, if you missed it, that's one thing, but you can't say he hasn't said anything.
I got to be honest, in Billy's defense, what came out of his mouth sounded really good. Whether it was true or not didn't matter. It sounded perfect, okay? Good job, Bill.
Yeah, Steve Kerr was going after the person that took the video,
No, he held Draymond accountable. He made it clear that this is really serious. But what he's saying,
what have they done? How have they held him accountable? They're just saying it's wrong. They haven't held him accountable.
He's staying away from the team. He said he's not going to be around the team for a while. They asked him, "Is that a team decision?" He said it's a mutual decision between the team and Draymond Green.
That's sitting on the fence, though. That's like a non-statement. He could say that's our decision. He needs to go away. He kind of sat on the fence. He's like, "Oh, it's a mutual thing." That's him. That's him covering Draymond a little bit there.
Not really. I think it's something where everyone recognizes that something bad happened, and this guy needs to not be around. I think the other thing to keep in mind is when they're talking about who leaked the footage. Steve Kerr talked about this in his press conference. He said, "I've been involved in the league for over 30 years. I've seen at least 20 fist fights. This happens. I know this is shocking to people." Earlier, Stugotz, I lied before we started recording. I told you didn't say anything wrong. You did say something wrong. I remember now.
Okay.
You said usually it's a shove and a guy shoves back. What you guys are describing is NBA game fights. That's an NBA game fight. That is not how NBA players fight. That's how NBA players fight in a game. Why do they fight like that? Because they can't fight? Because they're scared to fight? No, it's because if you fight, the penalties in our sport are much greater than that of baseball, hockey, or football. We have the most stringent regulations dealing with particularly close fist fights. That's why we don't see them in the NBA anymore after decades of seeing it happen all the time. The NBA changed its rules. So as a result, what you guys are describing is what happens in an NBA game. In an NBA practice, guys fight. Guys punch each other. I've seen guys choke each other. This happens. What Steve Kerr is talking about is it happens internally. We deal with it internally, and we move on. It does not become a public spectacle. At most, you hear a story about Zach Randolph was chasing Ruben Patterson in practice, right? Or Steve Blake was fighting against John Gilchrist in practice. You hear stories. You don't necessarily see them. And as a result, they're able to deal with them without a whole lot of conjecture. The leaking of the video made it impossible to deal with this without having a spectacle. And that's why they're talking about it. Also, just the sense of privacy. Like the idea is when you are in an NBA team or in an NBA locker room, there's an expectation that everything that goes on in here stays within here. And that expectation has withered away over the last decade or so. That's what they're talking about.
Your thoughts are what when we say it doesn't seem right? It doesn't seem correct for there to be more consequences for the whistleblower than for Draymond Green. It doesn't seem logical to think that Jordan Poole should forgive Draymond Green, given that this leaked, and now we're in a position where it seems like the Warriors are more upset by the leak than they are by the action, because the leak, as you say, is something that doesn't happen. What Draymond Green did is something that happens.
Precisely that. There's stuff that happens and stuff that doesn't happen. And understandably, the stuff that doesn't happen, leaking, exponentially makes things worse in a way that, by the way, it erodes at trust in a way that even a fist fight doesn't erode at trust like that. Now, Jordan Poole and how he feels, that's a different conversation. I'm going to set that aside for a second.
And you should say, by the way, when talking about the eroded trust, because Jordan Poole might find it harder to trust Draymond Green than whoever leaked that video going forward forevermore.
Absolutely. That's why I said Jordan Poole, we're going to set him aside for a second, because whether or not he has eroded trust is that's understandable. But what the leaker has done is basically said nothing that we say or do here is sacred to our locker room, to our internal family dynamics. You call it a whistleblower. Whistleblower on what? We know there was a fight. We know there was a punch. Who are we whistleblowing to? How are we saving America or employees? This isn't like the people who spoke out in the Suns organization about rampant, toxic work environment stuff. That's completely different. This is something that happened on a basketball court in a practice facility that happens all the time, and it's an accepted part of it because we understand that with these rising tensions and energies, there comes physical kind of ramifications at times. And, the other thing, I think it was Mike who said it. He said, well, he shoved him. He should have expected a shove back. He didn't have his dukes up. That's the only part why I hold Jordan Poole accountable. I don't care what he said. You could talk trash. Trash talk happens every day. And Draymond gets in your face. Okay. But the moment you shove a guy, you have to expect now something physical is about to happen. Now, what Draymond did, far and above and away, overreaction.
Whittingham is shaking his head at you. Whittingham right now is disgusted by you. Disgusted by you.
Be ready to punch someone in a practice?
No,
I didn't say
that.
He's saying if you push me, you have to expect maybe I could do something back to you.
The idea that I'm going to push you and that's the end of that is insane to me. Now, should he have expected a punch that hard? No.
Or that accurate.
Before I saw the video, it was explained to me as like a cartoon punch. It was so hard. I went on the radio and I described it in the words of Juju Gotti. He punched him into the multiverse when I saw it. Like, it was insane how hard that punch was. But it wasn't like Jordan Poole was like, okay, fight's about to happen. Oh, I didn't see that coming. He pushed him and then he kind of turned away. He's like, well, I've said my piece and now we're going to walk away amicably. What world do you live in? Again, I'm not blaming him for getting knocked out, but I am saying that once you get physical with someone, there has to be an expectation of physical retaliation. This isn't a courtroom and it's not Twitter where someone's going to fire off a missive or objection. It's a basketball court where people are, again, very physical, very aggressive, and in this case, very emotional. And finally, KYP. Know your personnel. This wasn't Andrew Wiggins, right? We'd be surprised if Andrew Wiggins escalated because he's not that kind of guy, right? He's not a physically aggressive guy. We know Draymond Green's track record. So there's no way you can be like, well, I didn't think Draymond would react like, I thought he would just be cool. That's not who he is.
Do you think it's over money?
I don't. I think what Draymond said in his press conference is true, although his press conference, woof. That was terrible. So much of it was terrible. He really dropped the ball. I mean, it was hilarious, but it was terrible in terms of taking ownership and accountability. But I think one thing he said in it is true. He's going with some stuff in his personal private life that is consuming him, and his reaction to a shove had more to do with that and him being in a bad frame of mind than it did what Jordan Poole said or what contract issues going on.
But I mean, like, don't you think that that's somewhat of a cop-out? Just saying, like, hey, that was bad, but, it happens, so that's okay. Like, that's what happens. Especially when you have people who, like, in Steve Kerr, who's, like, is always trying to tell people to do morally the right thing. Let's strive to be better at this. Let's strive to be better at that. And then it happens on his watch, and the response is just like, well, it happens, and sorry that you saw that. Like, it's not a good look.
Again, that's not the response. If you see what everyone from the Warriors is saying is like, that was unacceptable. They've all kind of condemned it as unacceptable.
But only after the video came out.
No, they did that. But I mean, they had a press conference after the video came out. But internally, the guy apologized to the team. He had to do the whole thing. Some people accepted it. Some people didn't. And there were going to be ramifications because we knew that this was a particularly vicious blow. We just hadn't seen it yet. But the reality is, Billy, is that at the same time, There are a separate set of rules that apply there that don't apply to us in regular life. And in cases of sexual harassment or, like crazy, weird toxic environment stuff, yeah, those things are archaic. But then there are other things where you have to accept, again, when you get a bunch of guys who are ramped up emotionally and are in an environment that breeds aggression, that demands aggression, that sometimes that aggression spills over.
I mean, just so we're clear, and I just want to clear this up, I was right.
Mm-hmm. You were right up until I remember the part about the shoving.
Oh.
Yeah, like, no, shove and shove back, no.
Stugotz
KYP.
will take 90% right. Thank you. I mean, we appreciate it, sir.
Stugotz, take that KYP, man, add it to the repertoire, man. I think you'll like that one.
I will. Thank you. I already taken it. Thank you.